The next session has to do with, that's session 9. We're looking at the physical urban growth and what the determinants are. Physical urban growth basically has to do with the number of people coming to the urban area, as a result of which the urban area is physically expanding to the extent that Accra, which began as a very small village, is now up to Dodowa, is up to Weja, is up to Amasaman. A sprawling area filled with so many people. In spite of that, the urban planners have managed somehow to infuse some kind of efficiency in the urban area, to the extent that if you came to the urban area or you live in the urban area, you know exactly what to get, what you want. What are the factors which determine this physical urban growth? The factors include growth as a factor, accessibility as a factor, as well as persistence as a factor, as well as site as a factor. We need to understand that physical urban growth starts from the center to the periphery. In other words, as I said a little earlier, Accra was a small village which sprang up from the Jamestown and Osu areas and began expanding. Like this is Accra, a small village, and then it began expanding from the village, from the center, outwardly until it is now at Weja. That's how urban areas grow, from the center to the periphery. And that has a lot of implications for urban life. There are 3 major problems that we can associate with physical growth, namely invasion and succession, in the sense that in every city that you go, you would find that there are traditional older structures and newer modern structures. You want to travel to London, and this is the first thing that will strike you. When you've not been to London before, you keep hearing about London, London, London. When you arrive in London and you hit the central business district, it's the first thing that you see. There are older buildings, and around them are newer modern buildings. And you look at the older buildings, and then you look at the newer, beautiful glass buildings, and you tell yourself that, it does not look good. But that is the nature of urbanization in terms of the physical growth. There is no one city in the world which has completely invaded the old structures and demolished them and replaced them with newer modern structures. You go to New York, you find older structures. You go to Memphis, Tennessee, you find older structures all over the place. So this is a feature that is ongoing. And well, the plan for urban planners is that eventually they will replace. In our own country, we have very old structures. Of course, Jamestown is still there. Pretty old colonial buildings and traditional buildings are there. You go to other places, you know, the older structures are there. You go to the central business district and you find that just a few modern buildings are springing up, but the rest of them are all old structures. So this is the nature of urbanization. And basically what we're trying to identify as a problem here is that you don't feel good seeing the older structures juxtaposed with the modern buildings. You don't feel good in yourself. You want to live in a place which is all modern, and then you feel good about yourself. So that's problem number 1. The second problem is the issue of zonation. As the urban areas grow from the center to the periphery, there are certain zones which are created along the circles through which the urban area expands. Now, the zones are areas which have the same distance from the central business district. In other words, if you say, for example, that Jawolo is a zone with Medina, you want to suggest that Medina has the same distance to the central business district as Jawolo equally have the same distance to the central business district. Those are zones. How do we measure distance? The assumption is that you measure a distance if you live in an area and you're about 10 kilometers from the central business district. The measurement is taken from the central post office. That is where you measure distance. You're traveling to Guitar and they say it's about 60 miles. The measurement is taken from the general post office, central post office. So the zones are areas which have the same distance from the central business district. The problem for urban planners is that all of these zones have to be self-sufficient. They have to be the so-called communities, meaning that those who live in these zones should not go outside of the zones to go and do business elsewhere. They should have everything within the zones. And what do we mean by self-sufficiency? We're talking here about social structural facilities. Every zone, for example, should have a police station where they can report infractions of the law. They should have places of worship as far as the religious institution is concerned. They should equally have economic facilities like shopping centers, shopping malls, and other areas or markets where the people can go and transact their business. They should have housing facilities for the family members who live in that particular zone or community. They should have schools, educational facilities, as well as healthcare facilities in the form of clinics or in the form of hospitals. Urban planning, if it is properly done, should make sure that all of these zonal facilities are provided so that you stay in your zone, you don't have to drive all the way to another zone to transact business, causing traffic jam as a result. This is a major challenge for urban planners. Then the other challenge is the standardization of prices. In every well-organized urban community, the prices are expected to be uniform. That means that if you buy a basket full of tomatoes in the Makola market for 10 Ghana cedis and go to Weja, you should buy the same basket full of tomatoes for 10 Ghana cedis, not 15 or 20 Ghana cedis. Why is this so critical? If you don't standardize prices in the urban community, the meaning is that where the prices are cheap will become the place of convergence for everyone. If the basket full of tomatoes is selling at 10 Ghana cedis in the Makola market, the people who live in Weja, because they want a cheaper price, they will have to commute all the way from Weja to the central business district to buy their tomatoes at the Makola market for 10 cedis. And you know what? This is what creates a lot of traffic jam on our roads. Or you want to come to the shopping mall in a crowd when you could have had a mall in your zone. People are rushing all the time to come to the central business district to do one business or the other, which they could have had done in their zones. That is why there is such a great need for the standardization of prices, so that if you commuted all the way from Weja to Salha Market or Makola Market, you are gaining nothing because you will find a basket full of tomatoes, 10 cedis, and they sell it in your area at the same 10 cedis. So why don't you buy it in your area and avoid coming all the way to Accra, causing traffic jams? The other problem is accessibility. Accessibility presents itself in two major ways. Number one is the reduction of geographical distance. How do people access the central business district where they do a lot of transactions. This can be done, number one, electronically. Thank God we have all kinds of electronic facilities nowadays. We have the computers. You can send an email to a person. You may be living in Dodua. You want to transact business at the ministry. You can send information via email. Or you can pick up a phone and call the minister or the secretary to the minister to book an appointment or whatever it is. You can transact the business on the phone. You know, that cuts down on the transportation costs. So that's one of the ways of accessing the urban areas or the central business district without having to be physically present. Electronic communication facilities are critically important. In the absence of that, you want to have an effective transportation system. You travel to other countries, London, for example, you find that the bus system is so well organized. At every 15 minutes, there's going to be a bus at the bus terminal. You can predict that if I go to the bus terminal at 8 o'clock, I'm going to get a bus, and that bus is leaving at 8:15 to my destination. At 8:15, another bus comes in and is filled by people. By 8:30, they leave, and 8:45, another bus is there. So it's all very effectively and efficiently organized. If you can afford to do that, a lot of people will leave their cars at home and come to the urban areas in buses because they can predict exactly what time they're going to be arriving in their workplaces and save the cost of having to drive their own cars. That way, accessibility is equally enhanced. The second problem of accessibility is the elimination of the obstacle of space. How do we do that? Obstacle of space. If you go to Accra looking for a piece of land to buy, you will not get it. Even if you got it, it's so expensive. The guy who is trying to sell the piece of land to you would mention such cutthroat prices that they can't afford it. That's the land. You know, people want to expand. They want to build here and build here. Or they want to expand the building a little bit this way or that way. And that's a problem. That's the geographical space. So what's the solution? Instead of expanding outwardly, why don't you expand skyward? High-rise buildings. Put up skyscrapers so that people can live in those skyscrapers and also do their business in a skyscraper as well. You may live on the 10th floor and do your business on the 4th floor. You know, this is what the industrialized societies are doing nowadays. You go to New York and it's dominated by all kinds of skyscrapers. It is not America trying to show off that they have money and they can afford these skyscrapers. It is utilitarian. It has useful outcomes for building such high buildings because it saves the cost on having to travel all the way, for example, from Sawam to the ministries. If you can just stay in Accra in a skyscraper, you live in a skyscraper and can just come down the next floor to work there. So these are some of the ways that accessibility can be enhanced in the urban communities. There's the problem of site as well. Site has to do with the substratum, topography, elevation, and proximity to water. Substratum refers to the quality of the soil in the area that you want to buy and develop your property, or the area that the government wants to build a certain socially significant facility. Topography has to do with the flatness or the hilliness of the area. Are you in a high area like McCarthy Hill, or are you in a flat surface?